1,000 years ago, the magical beasts were ruled by the Dragon Clan, and the one who stood above all was called the demonic god. He had strange ambitions and sowed chaos everywhere, leading an army of magical beasts that has taken over the human world. His greed knew no bounds, seeking to plunge every part of the universe into endless darkness. And then, in the face of death, humanity fully revealed its potential. At the dawn of the awakening of spiritual power, some chosen ones with the ability to control magical beasts. These chosen ones were called trappers. Xiao Xinyu, third grader at Shangnan High School. This guy witnessed a battle between a trapper and a magical beast. He miraculously survived this event. Wiping the blood off his face, Xiao Xinyu looked around, and he saw a beautiful woman in front of him, apologizing for the inconvenience caused. Her name is Su Ruyan, and this is the director of the Azure Dragon Academy. She handed over her business card with the words that she would compensate for the damage caused to his house and pay compensation. And you would send me to the Azure Dragon Academy. Immediately after these words, she sat on her magical beast and flew away. Easier, Xiao Xinyu looked at her business card with a smile and thought that in their world, everyone dreams of becoming a trapper, or, more simply, a hunter. Xiao Xinyu also wanted to become one. He alone did not even have money to buy a beast, and without it, it is impossible to pass the national exam for a hunter. Suddenly, Xiao Xinyu was distracted, and right at his feet lay a small animal. At first glance, it was clear that this puppy was a magical beast. The puppy pounced on our hero and began to lick his face. Xiao Xinyu picked him up and wondered where he came from and whether he could be tamed at all. Xiao Xinyu lifted the puppy above himself and looked at it, and remembered that the textbooks mentioned a creature similar to a dog, and it seemed to be a storm dog. These guys have a weak pedigree, and they require a lot of spiritual strength. However, Xiao Xinyu was happy, even familiar, and with a smile thought that now he could become a hunter. However, there are only 3 days left until the national exam, so it is unlikely that you will be able to make it in time. But Xiao Xinyu still decided that such a gift of fate could not be refused. With these thoughts, half an hour later, he was already standing in front of the threshold of the hunting shop. Xiao Xinyu had already come to his senses a little, and was thinking that perhaps it would be better to give him to someone who could take care of him. All of Xiao Xinyu understood that this beast had no future next to such a weakling, and also this little glutton had eaten up a week's worth of food in one night. While Xiao Xinyu was thinking about this, the door of the store opened and a man came out and asked why Xiao Xinyu came to his store so early. Xiao Xinyu immediately held out his dog and asked the man if he wanted to buy the animal. The man immediately declared that this was just nonsense, because storm dogs are animals with a low pedigree and without evolutionary paths, and no one would agree to buy one. Xiao Xinyu took a few steps back and said that if the man doesn't want to buy it, then he shouldn't take it. However, why shout? After that, Xiao Xinyu looked at his dog and was surprised to find that he now saw some kind of system window in front of him. Xiao Xinyu tried to rub his eyes. However, he still saw this window, and at the very bottom, it was written that this beast had a hidden path of evolution. Xiao Xinyu asked the shop owner to explain what it was. However, the shop owner said that Xiao Xinyu was just crazy. Then Xiao Xinyu hit himself on the head, but he still saw this window. Xiao Xinyu decided that it was only accessible to him. While Xiao Xinyu was talking to himself, one of his old acquaintances, Su Zhe, came up to him. Our hero's classmate and also the son of the richest man in this city. The guy smiled and said that Xiao Xinyu was a loser and didn't dare to take the exam because he didn't have a magical beast. After that, the guy came closer with a smile and said, with a smile, that he saw that Xiao Xinyu was still able to collect a few coins. The man burst out laughing and said that Xiao Xinyu would never pass the exam with this little animal, and he wouldn't know him even if he really wanted to. The man continued to laugh and talk about how Xiao Xinyu was such a loser that his girlfriend left him. After that, he looked into the eyes of our hero and said, "What changes if Xiao Xinyu did not know this but his girlfriend, already ex, and now she is dating him?" With these words, our hero's ex-girlfriend came up and greeted her new boyfriend, to which he replied that he apologized for being late, because he simply noticed his old friend and decided to greet him. The girl looked at our hero and said with a smile that she had broken up with him a long time ago, but inside, she didn't understand why she should even care about the opinion of some loser when she was dating such a rich guy. Xiao Xinyu pointed his finger at her and said that she shouldn't have forgotten who helped her when she was mine. He also added that he didn't care and she could continue to waste her life with that rich idiot. And finally, he said that it was he who abandoned her and not she him. After finishing his speech, Xiao Xinyu stuck out his tongue and left from there peacefully. On the way home, Xiao Xinyu thought that his dog was not useless at all. and it could probably be considered a gift of fate that he had a hidden path of evolution. 3 days later, Xiao Xinyu came to the city square because today was the day the hunter exam began. When Xiao Xinyu came here, those who knew him, just why did he even come here? After all, he doesn't even have a door. The crowd was talking about how Xiao Xinyu couldn't afford to buy it. However, 3 days ago, he signed up for the exam and even tried to apply to the Azure Dragon Academy. Xiao Xinyu approached the magic ball, but the others continued to discuss the fact that Xiao Xinyu was probably a real fool because the Brass Dragon Academy was the best of the 4 academies, and it was surprising that such a loser found the strength to show his stupidity in front of everyone. Xiao Xinyu greeted the teacher, whom he saw for the first time in his life, and said that he came for the exam. The teacher of the admissions committee of the Azure Dragon Academy greeted our hero. The man was surprised because Xiao Xinyu was the only student in this city who decided to apply to their academy. Ji appeared from behind and said with a laugh that Xiao Xinyu was a real fool who knew no bounds, because in the past 5 years, only 8 students from this city had applied to the Azure Dragon Academy. Even so, none of them were able to pass the entrance exam. The man approached our hero with a smile and said that he was nothing special, and that he was even ready to kneel and call him father if he could. However, this never happens in life. Xiao Xinyu looked him straight in the eye with anger and asked him to get ready, because soon this guy would have 2 dads. After that, Xiao Xinyu looked at the admissions teacher and said that he was ready to start. The teacher stood up and said that he needed to warn him right away. The selection process for the Azure Dragon Academy was extremely strict, and Xiao Xinyu hadn't even chosen other schools in case he failed. So if he didn't pass the exam, he would no longer be able to enter the Hunter Academy. Xiao Xinyu, despite the crowd's condemnation, came up close and said that he understood everything and was ready to begin. The teacher said that the first test is a test of spiritual strength and pointed to the magic ball. Xiao Xinyu immediately touched the magic ball, and the teacher said that his magic power was 3/16. Everyone else immediately laughed and said that he had not even come close to the threshold. The man thought sadly that at first it even seemed to him that there was a rather promising student in front of him. But since it turned out not to be so, after that he closed his eyes and asked the next one to touch the magic ball. However, after he looked down, he saw that the spiritual power indicators were changing, and it has already exceeded 800. The counter was approaching 1,000, and everyone around was saying that it was simply unbelievable, and they also started to speculate that perhaps the device for measuring spiritual strength had broken. Finally, the counter stopped growing when it reached 1.028. Spiritual strength indicators are directly related to the hunter's potential. Every 100 units of spiritual power allows him to make a contract with one of the magical beasts, and if he has 1,000 now, he will be able to become a 10-star beast hunter in the future. Over the past decades, only a few of these have appeared in the land of the dragon. And now the teacher was thinking that, to everyone's surprise, today they had found another genius. Our hero's ex immediately declared that this was complete nonsense, and that there were 2 tests at the Azure Dragon Academy, and he would definitely not give the next test for the quality of the magical beast bloodline. The teacher stood up and said it was time to conduct the next test. However, one of the workers suddenly ran up to him, and he whispered in my ear that it seemed like there was a small glitch in the spiritual strength meter, and the final score for the 5th of this candidate was 1.032. This meant that his result was higher than that of the best student who passed this selection by as much as 2 points. The student looked down and said he didn't tell anyone about this. The worker adjusted his cap and said he understood. After this, the teacher approached our hero and said that the second test is a test of the quality of the magical beast's pedigree. Xiao Xinyu smiled and summoned his magical beast. The aura around changed. From this call, incredible power emanated. But when it was all over, everyone saw an ordinary storm dog in front of them, and everyone started laughing and saying that this was the worst choice for checking the pedigree. The man immediately grabbed his head because, in addition to spiritual strength, the quality of the pedigree is one of the decisive factors limiting the development of hunters. It is obvious that this dog has extremely low quality. The teacher looked down sadly and said that he was very sorry, but this animal was not suitable. However, the other students took a closer look and declared that this was no ordinary storm. A moment later, the beast changed in appearance. Everyone else was incredibly surprised because everyone knew that these beasts have no path of evolution. The teacher came closer and scanned the dog. After that, he looked at our hero with the thought that this guy knows how to surprise. He proudly announced that Xiao Xinyu had passed the selection for the Azure Dragon Academy. The rich man and our hero's ex-girlfriend couldn't believe that he passed all the tests and began to quietly leave. However, Xiao Xinyu stopped him and asked, "Will son not even say goodbye to his new father?" The rich man immediately declared that freaks should know their place, and he was not going to get down on his knees and call our hero his father. Xiao Xinyu immediately asked his beast to help, and the rich kid had to bend over. Xiao Xinyu said that he would not let him go until he did what he promised. And through clenched teeth, Bogich called our hero his father and apologized. Xiao Xinyu immediately turned around and, saying that he couldn't possibly have such a worthless son, slowly walked away. His ex-girlfriend stood in his way and said with a smile that over the past 2.5 years she had fallen in love with him very much and had made a mistake only once, so she was asking for another chance to start all over again. However, Xiao Xinyu didn't even pay attention to her and walked past. The girl noticed this attitude and fell to her knees in tears, apologizing for her behavior. She continued to say that she had been wrong all this time. However, the hero did not even pay attention to this. After that, he decided that he needed to tell his sister that he entered the Academy of Azure Law. But his sister was a little busy at that time. Xiao Xinyu saw on the news that the area where his sister lived was currently under attack by monsters, and he immediately rushed over to her. With eyes red with anger, Xiao Xinyu saw a notification in front of him that the Black Hellstorm Wolf had obtained a new skill called the Bonds of Hell. Hell Howl. Xiao Xinyu pressed that he agreed to accept this skill, but he couldn't understand why. Despite pressing it, the skill didn't work. Meanwhile, he had already found himself next to his sister, who was now a moment away from death. Xiao Xinyu remembered that the last time he saw the man from the Azure Dragon Academy handling his beast, he would shout out the name of the skill, so Xiao Xinyu decided to give it a try as well. He cast a spell and the wolf began to obey him, after which the skill worked perfectly, cutting off the monster's tail and head. Xiao Xinyu walked a little closer and was surprised that he was actually able to kill this monster. After that, he immediately ran to his sister and asked if she was okay. The girl stood up and hugged him and then asked how he did it. Xiao Xinyu said that he apologized for coming so late and was very glad that she was okay. After that, he took her hand and, saying that he had entered the Azure Dragon Academy, pressed her to himself. And then he looked down and pointed to the dog, saying that it was his new beast, a storm wolf named Blackfang. After giving the girl to her mother, Xiao Xinyu and his sister approached the monster's corpse. When he got close enough, a notification appeared in front of him that he was seeing the core of a magical beast in the initial stage, with the poison attribute. Xiao Xinyu immediately snatched it away and threw it to his dog, who caught it in midair. After that, Xiao Xinyu looked at the rescued citizens and declared that they were now safe. And then immediately many people surrounded him and began to thank him for helping them to escape. Also, a little girl came up to him and said that when she grows up, she also wants to become a hunter like Xiao Xinyu. Xiao Xinyu patted her head and said with a smile that he was sure that she would definitely succeed. After such a busy day, Xiao Xinyu returned home and fell asleep without any problems. Late at night, his sister entered his room unnoticed. She looked closer and saw a seal on his back, after which she called an unknown person and said that the curse of the Dragon Rune was still in effect. The seal on the essence of the Dragon King was not touched. She talked a little more and asked why her brother was able to make a contract with a magical beast, because it doesn't make any sense. On the other side, she was told that it was probably fate and was ordered to keep a close eye on him. The girl said that she would do so and hung up. The next morning, Xiao Xinyu packed his things and went to the train station, and the entire neighborhood saw him off. And the neighbors also said that he should take this basket of salted duck eggs with him, because he loved them incredibly as a child. And his wife said that they collected a little bit from every resident of the area, and they give this money to him so that he could pay for the necessary things for his education. Xiao Xinyu waved to them with a smile on his face and said that they didn't have to see him off because he would be returning to the area again during the holidays. After that, they boarded the train, but after a few hours it was announced that magical beasts had been spotted on the section of the railway and that the carriage might be shaking, so dear passengers should not panic. A few minutes later, it was announced that the train had successfully passed the dangerous section and was continuing on schedule. Xiao Xinyu said with a smile that he was very glad that nothing happened, because they had almost arrived at the academy. His sister replied with a smile that school would start soon, and added that he couldn't shirk work. However, immediately after these words, the entire train shook. Xiao Xinyu immediately stood up and asked what was going on. The announcer announced that magical beasts, a flock of three-headed giant monkeys, had been spotted ahead, so passengers should protect their lives and property. These monkeys had already climbed onto the train and were starting to break through the ceiling. The rest were very worried and wondering what they were doing here, since there were no hunters here. And a few seconds later, one of the monsters burst inside. Xiao Xinyu looked at his sister and ordered her to sit here and not come out, after which he went into battle with this giant monkey. But immediately the daughter of the head of the Heaven Guild named Qin appeared in front of him. She said that if Xiao Xinyu did not want to die, then he would better move away and she would deal with this monster herself. After which she summoned her magical beast. Xiao Xinyu immediately used the system and saw that it was a three-tailed thunder fox. The third stage is like epic. Xiao Xinyu looked at the other passengers and ordered them to get out of the carriage as quickly as possible. After that, he called his magical beast and said that now they would help this girl. She killed one of the monkeys, but two more immediately attacked her. Xiao Xinyu used his skill called Hell Bonds and immobilized those monkeys, then looked at them with a smile and asked why they suddenly became quiet. Having finished dealing with them, the girl looked at our hero and said that she did not expect that he was also a hunter. After that, she thanked him with a warm smile for his help. However, Xiao Xinyu replied that there was no need for gratitude, since in such a situation, any hunter would have done the same. After that, Xiao Xinyu looked at her magical beast and saw in the system window that her status was depressed and she had post-traumatic stress disorder. Xiao Xinyu said that he saw that recently her fox was very active during the battle, and after that it became sluggish and sometimes even itself. The girl immediately asked how Xiao Xinyu was able to find out about this. Xiao Xinyu came up with the idea that he had read a little about this in a guide to magical beast diseases, and such animals were very often prone to post-traumatic stress disorder. The girl smiled and hit him on the back and said that she was very grateful for the fifth, and now she understood why her beast had hardly smiled lately. Then she hugged our hero and said that from now on he was her little brother. Our hero's sister looked at all this and was clearly unhappy with it. She immediately approached our hero and, hugging him by the hand, apologized, saying that, in fact, he was her brother. But Qin immediately took the boy back and said that they could share him. And so they dragged our hero along as if in a tightrope competition and argued about whose brother he would be. At this pace, Xiao Xinyu, his sister, and his new friend reached the central plaza of the Azure Dragon Academy beyond 5th, where the other first-year students had gathered. The dean of the academy took the microphone and welcomed all the newcomers, after which he apologized and asked the students to be patient and wait for the principal. After a few minutes, the director of the Azure Dragon Academy finally appeared. The dean looked at the principal and asked if she could say a few words to the freshmen. Our heroes were incredibly surprised because in front of him was the same woman who destroyed the monster that destroyed his house, and he did not expect that she would be the director of the Azure Dragon Academy. The director meanwhile took the microphone in her hand and congratulated everyone on their admission to this academy and immediately reminded them of one thing. Her gaze changed and she sternly said that no matter whether they were from a noble family or an expert, in the Azure Dragon Academy, everyone must obey its rules and the special 8th rule. Waving her hand, the girl stated that the 8th rule of the academy states that if a conflict arises between students, it must be resolved through a duel in the arena, regardless of who is right or wrong, and the loser must apologize to the winner. Xiao Xinyu thought that the 8th rule may seem harsh, but in fact, it prevents the offspring of noble families from using their power to oppress the weak, and even ordinary students can defend their honor with their own strength, and this is an excellent approach. When Xiao Xinyu got to the classroom, he saw a guy there who immediately recognized him. The boy was shouting that he couldn't believe that he was in a class with one of the people whose magical energy was more than 1,000. However, the teacher asked everyone to shut up and sit down because they were starting the first lesson. Xiao Xinyu sat down next to this boy, who said that from now on he would follow his elder brother, which made Xiao Xinyu think that his family had been growing too quickly lately. The teacher wrote his name on the board, then looked at the students and said that from now on, he would be their supervisor, and also hoped that they would all achieve a lot in the Azure Dragon Academy. After which he paused for a moment and asked everyone to open the first chapter of the illustrated magical reference book of beasts to begin with the theoretical part. The strength of a magical beast is determined by two factors. The first is the beast form. Currently, the following stages are known from the lowest to the highest. First comes the initial form, followed by the mature form and the full form. After the complete form comes the transcendental form, and finally the form of the king of beasts. The second factor is the quality of the bloodline of the magical beast. According to records, the blood of magical beasts is classified from lower to higher. A beast with a higher bloodline can suppress those with a weaker bloodline. And in addition, the attributes of magical beasts can suppress and influence each other. For example, the 5 most common are metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The principle is as follows. Wood suppresses earth, earth suppresses water, water suppresses fire, and so on. And on the basis of these basic attributes, other attributes may appear, such as sand or lightning. But this topic is for the next lesson. While listening to all this, Xiao Xinyu suddenly fell asleep on his desk, and the teacher threw chalk at him, ordering him to wake up. Xiao Xinyu stood up and looked at the teacher in surprise, who said that our hero had no shortage of courage because he decided to sleep right on his subject. The teacher looked at our hero with anger in his eyes and said that if he did not know the answer to the next question, he could immediately pack his things and imitate. After thinking a little, the teacher asked, "What is the weakness of the demonic lizard?" Xiao Xinyu quickly stood up and loudly declared that this was the poison bag under the belly. However, the teacher did not calm down and asked in what area the ice giant crocodile usually lives, to which the hero easily answered that in the southern part of the country of dragons, in the area of the lake near the subglacial waterfalls. The teacher thought for a moment and decided that it would be interesting to test this guy, after which he asked what would happen if he encountered a sky-tearing demonic tiger in the wild. Xiao Xinyu replied that he would need to clamp his ID tag in his teeth and hide somewhere in the shadows. All the students were surprised, as well as the teacher. He looked questioningly at our hero and asked why. Xiao Xinyu explained with a smile that it was because the sky-breaking demon tiger was a magical creature at the Beast King stage, a mutated species that could only be fought against by a hunter of at least the 6-star level. And if newcomers like Xiao Xinyu or the other disciples encountered it in the wild, they would only have one option: prepare to die. Xiao Xinyu paused for a moment and said with a smile that that was why he would take the identification tag, so that his relatives could identify his body and would lie down somewhere in the shade to prevent the tissue from decomposing too quickly. After that, the teacher slammed his hand on the table and said that this answer was beyond praise, and also added that he actually asked questions from the following editions. So he wondered how Xiao Xinyu knew about this. Xiao Xinyu showed these publications with a smile and said that it was because he had already studied them. The other students wondered how they were supposed to keep up with our hero and where this child prodigy came from. The teacher thought for a moment and said that the class should now engage in self-study, and Xiao Xinyu would go with him. When they went out into the corridor, Xiao Xinyu apologized and promised not to sleep in class anymore, but the teacher replied that that was not the issue. The man looked at him and said that he was surprised that Xiao Xinyu was able to learn the entire course of theory in just half a lesson. Xiao Xinyu replied that it was all thanks to the talent of the teacher, the braiding teacher, because he was an excellent specialist. Because of this, the teacher got angry because he understood that he had done nothing here, and said that if Xiao Xinyu had already learned all the theory, then it was time for him to move on to more advanced materials. With these words, he handed him a business card and said that this was his pass to the library of the Dragon Academy. With the help of this thing, Xiao Xinyu would be able to visit the library and borrow books for free. Immediately after that, the teacher patted him on the back and said that Xiao Xinyu should go because there was nothing more for him to learn here. Xiao Xinyu followed this advice and went to the library to study knowledge. But during this, the deputy dean's son, Wang Yan, suddenly entered the library and announced that the library belonged to him today, so everyone should go out. However, girls can stay and study together. The girls immediately began to tremble with fear and asked to be let go. However, Xiao Xinyu closed his book and asked those who were disturbing the silence to shut up, after which he threw the book right at the guy's head. Van grabbed his head and asked who dared to do this. One of his sub-Kalims pointed his finger at our hero and said that this guy clearly does not know his place. Xiao Xinyu approached the aristocrat and said that he had no conscience at all since he was bullying girls. However, when he was saying this, a girl came up to him and said that our hero had better leave because he was the son of the deputy dean, and he was clearly not worth messing with. Xiao Xinyu smiled and understood why this guy was so impudent. Aristocrat smiled back and said that he was glad that Xiao Xinyu realized everything, but now he had to fall to his knees and apologize. But instead, Xiao Xinyu took a few steps forward and kicked him in the balls. The guy grabbed his crotch and said on his knees that Xiao Xinyu would not be able to cope with the consequences, and he would definitely make sure that he did not leave the library alive. Lying on the floor, he was shouting that today, Xiao Xinyu would find out who the owner of the academy was. Suddenly, the director entered the library. She said that she was surprised that this guy had such an arrogant tone because she didn't even know that he was the boss here. Wang looked at the woman and wondered why the director came here so quickly. The headmistress looked him straight in the eye and said that the boy should know this very well. And if a conflict arises between them, They must resolve it as stated in the 8th article of the Academy's charter. The 8th article states that if a conflict arises between students, it must be resolved through a duel in the arena, and regardless of who is right or wrong, the loser must apologize to the winner. News that Xiao Xinyu would fight against Wang quickly spread around. Just an hour later, Xiao Xinyu was already standing in the arena, facing his opponent. They shook hands, and as soon as the duel began, Van immediately summoned his beast. Xiao Xinyu used this analysis and saw that in front of him stood an ice leopard, a legendary one, with 2 attributes at once, ice and wind. After that, he summoned his beast. One of the students said that our hero's animal looks quite impressive, and the students confirmed that in terms of beauty, the leopard definitely loses. The director also watched this fight from her office and thought that our hero's magical beast was quite strange, and she had never seen anything like it before. After all, this is the first time in history that a storm dog was able to evolve. The director looked at this with surprise, because it was always believed that he simply had no path of evolution. So how could Xiao Xinyu achieve this, the woman wondered. The beasts entered into a duel. One of the teachers thought that the hellish storm wolf is a magical beast with the attributes of fire and wind, and the 6-legged leopard, wind and ice. Apparently, Xiao Xinyu will not be able to overcome the advantage of the elements. Immediately after this, the leopard froze our hero's beast with one breath, immobilizing it completely. Van laughed and said that very soon this amazing wolf cub would freeze to death. Xiao Xinyu smiled and asked if Wang was really so sure of this. After that, Xiao Xinyu stretched out his hand and commanded the door to use dark hunting, and the demonic beast immediately disappeared. The director and the teacher who watched this fight could not believe it, because it turns out that our hero's beast has 3 attributes. Immediately after this, our hero's beast appeared from the shadows. However, the leopard managed to protect his owner. Xiao Xinyu called the beast back to him and used the skill called Claw of Oblivion again. The leopard could do nothing to counter this. The director knew very well that this skill was a skill of the dark attribute. When it hit the target, it would cause a period of 3 seconds. Xiao Xinyu shouted that the sentence was finished and ordered his beast to use Hell Howl. The wolf hit the target and left the leopard unconscious. A few seconds later, the person watching the fight ran up and raised our hero's hand up, saying that Xiao Xinyu had won. Wang, meanwhile, fell to his knees and could not believe that this really happened. Xiao Xinyu slowly walked up to him and said that the guy had lost. The headmistress immediately appeared and said that he had to apologize according to school rules. Wang sank deeply and apologized. After that, he stood up with the thought that Xiao Xinyu would definitely pay for this. At the same time, Xiao Xinyu was talking to the headmistress, and the woman was saying that the fight was really impressive and Xiao Xinyu was already the 2nd student who was able to impress her. So we have no feeling waiting for his performance at the rating tournament for freshmen that will take place in 3 days. Xiao Xinyu smiled and thanked for the praise, but said that he was interested to know who was the first student who was admired. The director said that she was a genius girl with a spiritual power level above 1,000. Xiao Xinyu thought that this was not the first time they had heard this name. They had even said it at the entrance exams. The director smiled and walked closer to our hero and handed him a spatial ring. She said that she knows how to appreciate talents, so Xiao Xinyu can take this as a reward. Xiao Xinyu couldn't believe his luck because this item can store anything and is a great gift. After taking this reward, Xiao Xinyu thanked the director and headed back, thinking that the whole country was probably worried, so he needed to return home as soon as possible. On the way, a little girl crashed into him. Xiao Xinyu took her shoulders and asked if everything was okay. The girl nodded her head and Xiao Xinyu patted her head, asking her to look around next time. However, immediately after this, the girl approached him and said that she had nowhere to go, so she asked Xiao Xinyu to take her in. Xiao Xinyu couldn't refuse her and brought her to the dormitory. Sister immediately grabbed his ear and asked, "Did he really kidnap a child?" Xiao Xinyu was cool enough to explain everything. In short, the girl's name is Shy. She is afraid of magical beasts, so she can't become a hunter. She was constantly bullied at home, so she ran away. Xiao Xinyu said that he brought her here to help her overcome her fear. The girl hugged our hero's sister and said that she didn't want to go home. The sister smiled and said that the girl could stay for a while. After that, the sister looked at her brother and said that he should under no circumstances contact the girls from the E family. The next morning, Xiao Xinyu went to the academy and wondered why he shouldn't meet the people from the Ye family. While he was thinking about this, his new friend came up to him and said that today in class they would have to determine roles on the battlefield. Xiao Xinyu adjusted his hair and said that most hunters worked in a team, and their roles and responsibilities were different. The marksman has ranged combat skills that allow him to destroy enemies from a distance. The mage has well-developed mass control skills that give him a significant advantage in a team fight. The tank has strong defense and skills that restore health. Roughly speaking, he is a shield for the rest of the team. The killer is highly maneuverable and capable of finishing off enemies. His task is to attack those who can barely stand on their feet. And support is famous for its enhancing skills that impose many positive effects on all team members. The guy thanked our hero and asked where he thought the storm should place his butterfly. Xiao Xinyu expressed his thoughts, and together they went to class, where the teacher was already waiting for them, who said that now, according to the ordinal numbers, they should call their beast to take the test, and thus they will determine their role in the group. The first was a student named Song Hu. The teacher immediately replied that there was no doubt and his door had powerful protection. So now he was there. After that, there was Yu. The teacher thought for a while and said that this guy has mass skills, so he will be a magician. Xiao Xinyu passed all the tests and said that he would probably be suitable for the role of a killer. However, the teacher said that we should continue the test, and it turned out that he also had a huge range. The protection test was also passed. The control test also ended well. Well, finally it turns out to be a boost. The teacher scanned the beast and said that according to the data analysis, anytime within 10 meters of the hellish assault, Wolf receives an increase in strength and movement speed, as well as rage. The teacher thought that Xiao Xinyu was really amazing and so good that there was nothing to say. Then he raised his finger and said that in fact, in addition to these 5 roles, there was another special role. The students asked the teacher in surprise what exactly such a role was suitable for. The teacher explained that it is suitable for those people whose summoned creature is equally suitable for all roles, in which case the hunter is especially honored with a role. After that, he smiled and said that it was obvious to everyone that Xiao Xinyu was the only all-rounder in this group. The students immediately started asking him how he was able to achieve this and become so cool, but Xiao Xinyu became a little embarrassed and said that in fact, it was still too weak. The teacher said that you shouldn't rejoice too early because universals are certainly rare, but they still exist. And at the moment they know not only about Xiao, because at least 3 more exist. The teacher looked at the other students and said that they should all continue to try hard and then they would be able to achieve unprecedented heights. A little later, Xiao Xinyu was walking home and was happy that his classes were finally over. On the way home, he thought about buying some supplements for the closed Black Fang to prepare for the beginner ranking competition. However, he was suddenly stopped by a group of unknown people and asked where Xiao Xinyu was in such a hurry. Wang, surrounded by his thugs, said that Xiao Xinyu himself asked for it. Van pointed his finger at our hero with a nasty smile and asked his friends to break his leg to see how he could remain so insolent after that. The thugs began to approach our hero and say that the fact that he dared to cross the young man's path was entirely his fault. Xiao Xinyu looked at them and through evaluation found out that they were all level 4 hunters. After that, Xiao Xinyu asked, are they not ashamed at all to attack someone who is only level 1? However, instead of answering, the main one called his Thunder Tiger, which immediately rushed at our hero. Xiao Xinyu immediately summoned his beast in response, and the wolf was able to defeat the tiger. The bully was surprised and thought that the young master did not warn us that our hero's door was so strong. In appearance, he only has a mature form, so how can he resist those who have the 4th level, the bully thought. The others noticed that Xiao Xinyu was quite strong and also summoned their beasts. Suddenly, in front of our hero, his so-called older sister unexpectedly appeared, who said that I was always wondering who would win, the Black Tiger or her guild, the Heavens. The attackers realized that they were now outnumbered and so immediately attempted to escape. After all, everyone knew very well that the Heavens were the 2nd guild in the ranking of hunters in this city. Even the Storm Guild, which was in 1st place, would not dare to enter into conflict with them. So one of them immediately bowed and asked, what brought Madame Qin here? Well, the girl came up to our hero and threw her arm over his shoulder, saying that if she hadn't passed by, she would never have found out that the highly respected member of the Dragon Guild was going to make her his dear brother. People immediately said that in fact she was the only one in the family, to which she replied that Xiao Xinyu was her adopted brother whom she recognized, and if someone decided to offend him, then first they would have to deal with her. And in addition, with the entire Heavenly Guild. The Black Tiger Guild immediately apologized and said that there was a small misunderstanding. After which one of them pointed at Van and loudly declared that this was all because of him, because this guy hired them to cause trouble for the brother of the Heavenly Guild. Wang, meanwhile, pissed himself and raised his hands up saying that he didn't know that Xiao Xinyu was her brother. The Black Tiger Guild immediately began to kick him and tell him that he couldn't attack such high-ranking people. After that, Xiao Xinyu and his so-called older sister went to have a snack. The girl asked why her brother even ran into them, to which he replied that he just wanted to buy some food for the Black Fang, but didn't know that he would be so lucky to get into such trouble. The girl said that if our hero needed tonics and food for the animals, he could have just asked her because the guild specializes in them. The girl raised her finger with a smile and said that if our hero ever needs tonics, he can just say so, and the sister will give everything for free. She led him inside and said that this is their training hall, equipped with the most advanced 3 supervisions that help the beast as quickly as possible and master various skills. They also have a recreation area where hunters can relax after the building, as well as a golf sauna and many other entertainments. Also, here is a conference room. On the next one is the same, where meetings are held on important issues and plans for the further development of the company are made. After that, they went further, and the girl said that this was a medical area with advanced equipment and a wide range of medicines. The girl bent down a little and added that the most important thing is that their doctors hunters have the highest qualifications, providing the best services for the treatment of wounded doors. Xiao Xinyu plucked up his courage and walked up to the girl, took her by the shoulders and asked if he could join the guild and become a doctor. Another woman immediately appeared in front of him. It was the deputy head of the Heaven Guild. Her name was Liu. She looked at our hero and asked, "Does he really think that with his age he can get a job in the guild later?" After that, the girl smiled and said that it wasn't even funny. However, Chin approached the deputy and said that this was the guy she was talking about, who helped her on the train back then, the so-called sworn brother. The deputy looked at our hero with an appraising glance, but her reasoning was interrupted by one of the workers who said that several seriously wounded animals had just been delivered to them, and they were short of personnel. The girl immediately looked at him and asked him to calm down, saying that he would just need to ask other branches for help. However, the guy explained that there was very little time left because many of them were badly wounded and were bleeding profusely, so it was obvious that they would not last long. Xiao Xinyu loudly declared that he could help, and now there was not a single second to lose. After that, Xiao Xinyu walked out into the corridor and saw Dina, a restless hunter, begging to save his beast. After all, he had already lost too much blood. Xiao Xinyu used his system to find out that he had multiple wounds from the attack of the poisonous bee queen, causing poison damage and preventing healing. Xiao Xinyu approached the hunter and said that he could stop the bleeding of this beast, but did the owner know? To which the owner immediately replied that he had no choice in this situation and he begged to help his beast. He immediately replied that he needed to mix 1 degree of heavenly grass with a purple crystal flower to get 20 grams of medicinal mixture, and then add the core of a mature magical beast with a poison attribute and boil for 5 minutes. The doctors were surprised because all these ingredients are highly toxic, and it all sounds like Xiao Xinyu decided to put out a fire with gasoline. Xiao Xinyu looked at them resolutely and said that they must immediately prepare this medicine according to his prescription. Otherwise, they would simply waste time and this beast would die. The beast's owner looked at the doctors and ordered them to carry out the orders of this young man as quickly as possible. After 5 minutes, one of the doctors ran up to them and said that everything was ready. Xiao Xinyu immediately pulled on his gloves and covered the wounds with the elixir, causing the beast to scream loudly. The owner initially wanted to say something against it, but he saw that the bleeding had stopped and the healing process had begun. After another half hour, the beast had already returned to normal and had been given all the necessary help. All that was left was rehabilitation. Xiao Xinyu, with a smile, approached the deputy guild and his so-called sister, asking them if they were satisfied with his work. The deputy said that this was simply beyond all praise, and she was forced to admit that she had rushed to her conclusions about our hero, after which she extended her hand and said that she was officially inviting him to the position of special pharmacist. Xiao Xinyu shook his hand and said that he accepted the position with pleasure. After he returned home, his sister immediately asked him if he really wanted to say that he was late, because he was signing a labor contract with the Heaven Guild. The hero noted that this was true, and the sister turned away with the words that it turns out that someone who completely forgot about his own sister right after he found himself some rich woman. Xiao Xinyu raised his hands and began to say that he would never do that to his own sister. She came up and asked what a pharmacist was. Expressing his opinion that it was probably something edible, Xiao Xinyu smiled and replied that it wasn't quite like that, but now he had a job for which he would be well paid. Xiao Xinyu stood up and said with a smile that he was even looking to take his family out to a restaurant this weekend, which made the little girl incredibly happy. Meanwhile, Van was in the ward with a broken leg and cursed our hero. He swore that he would never forget this humiliation. His father came into his room and said that his son was a worthless weakling. The son, with tears in his eyes, began to beg his father to help him do something. The father looked down at him and asked, did his son really lose to some country bumpkin from a small town? Because with this act, he disgraced not only himself but their entire family. The little one wiped away his tears and said that his opponent had a beast that had 3 attributes, and besides, the Heaven Guild was behind him, so there was no chance of getting revenge on him. The father laughed and said that of course the Vesta Guildians were strong and could not be competed with. But if Xiao Xinyu accidentally died at the hands of a magical beast during the tests on the mountain, then it would have nothing to do with their family. A few days later, all the students were gathered near the game. The director appeared and announced that today all new students would face another test. It would be broadcast in real time on all screens. Father Wang also stated that the bracelets worn by the students would record the number of magical beasts they had killed and would also keep a log of their combat actions, with killing 1 to 10 magical beasts being awarded a level 5 grade, 11 to 30 being a level 4 grade, 31 to 50 being a level 2 grade, and 51 to 80 being an S grade, and finally killing over 80 magical beasts would be awarded an S+ grade. The director looked at the deputy and said that he forgot to announce the especially gifted participants among the newcomers this year before the start of the test. The man immediately raised his right hand and said that according to the results of the entrance test this year, they can immediately single out 3 especially gifted students. First class Murong Yang Shuo, and also his sister named Murong Xin, and the third class, student Xiao Xinyu. However, Xiao Xinyu did not pay attention to this. He thought that his opponents could be called the Murong family. After all, there were 4 great dynasties of hunters in the country, and he would be against one of these families. Meanwhile, in the broadcast studio of the Azure Dragon Academy, there was a man who said that he was the host of this test. The director looked at the deputy and asked how far he thought Xiao Xinyu would advance, to which he replied that he thought no more than 50, and also added that he had taken that with a margin. However, our hero's teacher thought about it and said that he categorically disagreed, because considering this guy's talents, he could kill all 80. The director smiled and said that in her opinion, they were both wrong and perhaps he would perform a real miracle and record E would be broken this year. Meanwhile, the test had begun, and newcomers had already begun to enter the territory. It didn't take long before a second-grade student named Wang killed a bear, so the total number of magical beasts had already exceeded 10. Sun Tian from the 5th class has already killed 20 magic doors. And after just one test, Yang Shuo had finished off 43 magical beasts. The host said that this guy is the only beast that was able to achieve full form among the newbies. His ability Spatial Dash not only instantly reduces the distance to targets, but also strengthens any attack by adding a development effect. Therefore, even though his opponent now is a silver snake that has exceptional recovery abilities, I was unlucky enough to meet a white griffin that completely nullifies its regeneration. This is approximately what the leader's chart looks like now. It is led by Lady Murong along with her beast, the Winged Bone Verily, a legendary bloodline, and is also the only undead beast in this trial. The girl's brother checked the leaderboard and wondered if she would be the one to take first place in this challenge, when suddenly, before his eyes, someone overtook his sister. While the girl was fighting the huge lion, which was valued at 5 points, Xiao Xinyu suddenly appeared and dealt the finishing blow. After beheading the epic lion, Xiao Xinyu thanked the girl for distracting him. On the outside, she was cold as ice, but inside the fury was incredible. Meanwhile, the host was saying that this was simply an incredible turn of events, and that with the help of Xiao Xinyu's trickery, he was able to come out on top. However, it is too early to relax. An epic magical ant has just appeared, and even through the screen its danger can be felt. Who would dare to challenge such a creature to battle? Xiao Xinyu immediately used his skill to finish off the monster. However, the host said that, to everyone's surprise, the wyvern used sound waves to prevent the Hellwolf from finishing off its opponent. In order to immediately use Necrotic Flame and kill this ant myself. After this monster died, Xiao Xinyu looked at the girl and said that he never thought that she would be so vindictive. At the same time, there is less than an hour left until the end of the test. Who will win in the end? The rivalry continues, and the host says that the girl again snatches the glasses right from under our hero's nose. It seems that wherever he goes, his vengeful rival immediately appears nearby and takes away his prey. In the last half hour, she had firmly secured first place by killing the monsters that Xiao Xinyu found. Xiao Xinyu looked at the girl and asked, "Does this really justify her behavior even though he only stole one beast from her?" Xiao Xinyu looked at the girl and said that he was not going to give in anymore, and the host immediately said, "So that's it." To Xiao Xinyu's surprise, he said that he had been holding back all this time. However, there are only 30 minutes left. Will Xiao Xinyu be able to return to first place? Minutes are ticking, and the number of killed monsters has already broken all records. Meanwhile, Murong was thinking that in the air, Xiao Xinyu would not be able to get past her. However, to her surprise, Xiao Xinyu was able to reach even the sky. He had already gone far ahead, and with a smile he said that there were less minutes left and there was no way she could beat him, while the host shouted that if nothing happened, then Xiao Xinyu would take first place. When Xiao Xinyu suddenly noticed the heavy aura of the locked host, he must have been surprised. He didn't understand how a fully developed third-form magical beast ended up here. This magical beast chose our hero as its target and rushed to attack. A few seconds later, he was thrown down, and Xiao Xinyu was holding onto the last branch. The girl immediately came to his aid and asked for his hand. Xiao Xinyu saw Wang not far from him, and a puzzle came together in his head. However, the branch broke off and Xiao Xinyu fell down. In the broadcast studio, the teacher said that he was going to personally go to save his students. But the director said that there was no need to worry so much. These guys are also her students. And as a director, she will not allow anything to happen to them, so she will go too. The deputy thought that he was a real genius, because this was just a small trick, and Xiao Xinyu would already go to the realm of the dead. A few seconds later, Xiao Xinyu regained consciousness and realized that, thank God, he was still alive. After this, he noticed that his beast had offered up its own body in order to save its owner. Xiao Xinyu immediately took out one of the elixirs and made the dog drink it to make him feel better. The weather changed instantly. Everything around turned gray and it started to rain. Xiao Xinyu used his power to force the wolf to stand up and said that it was time for them to find a place to take shelter from this rain. Hiding in one of the caves, Xiao Xinyu wondered when the rain would stop. Inside, he thought that his sister was probably very worried right now. He was also interested in how that girl who desperately tried to save him was doing now. When Xiao Xinyu returned to the cave to make a fire for food, he was suddenly grabbed by someone's hand. It was a girl with kitten ears. She squeezed her hand and said that Xiao Xinyu just saw the Empress's face, so now he will have to kill him. Xiao Xinyu immediately used the analysis and found out that the nine-tailed fox standing in front of him was the form of the King of Beasts, the first step of such a mythical bloodline. The girl meanwhile waved her tails and said that she didn't expect that some person would find out that she lived here. Xiao Xinyu thought that this wouldn't help him at all, and against monsters of this level he didn't have a single chance confrontation. The Queen of the Beasts looked him straight in the eyes and said that he clearly could not be left alive. However, Xiao Xinyu knew through analysis that she was not in the best shape right now. He immediately asked her to stop and said that he knew that she had recently been injured by a pure-blooded dragon, which meant that she would die in literally half an hour. The girl let go of his neck and asked how Xiao Xinyu knew this. Xiao Xinyu immediately thought that this was his chance. He jumped back as the fox coughed up blood. After assessing her further, Xiao Xinyu thought that, although he didn't understand where did the purebred dragon come from, whose species was thought to be extinct 300 years ago, who was locked up, first need to stabilize her condition. He said that he could save her. The girl wiped the blood from her mouth and asked how a mere pathetic one-star hunter could cure her, since he was definitely not capable of it. After that, she proudly said that these wounds were inflicted on her by a purebred dragon, and even the most outstanding doctors could not help her. Xiao Xinyu said that he could cure her if she asked. Inside, he was thinking that he needed to somehow make sure that she wouldn't kill him as soon as she recovered, so he decided to offer her a contract. These words made her incredibly angry. She asked, did Xiao Xinyu really want her to submit to him and become just a beast? Xiao Xinyu said that it was so, and then she became truly furious and said that she would kill him. She was right in front of him again and grabbed the guy by the throat. However, Xiao Xinyu was completely calm. He said that she could of course kill him, but in that case she would not live long. The fox thought angrily that she would really have to bow down before this man. As her grip suddenly weakened and her legs buckled, Xiao Xinyu said that the dragon's power had probably already penetrated her heart, and if she didn't make a contract with him, it would be too late. The fox thought angrily that she couldn't die here because she hadn't completed her sister's task yet. After that, she let go of her hand and saw that she had left bruises on the guy's neck. The girl angrily said that she agreed to sign contracts. As soon as she said this, Xiao Xinyu touched her forehead with his finger and declared that she now belonged to him, and he was her master. The girl dropped to one knee and asked the owner to heal her. Xiao Xinyu began to take off his outerwear, saying that of course he would help her, because now they were connected, and he definitely had to save her. The girl looked at this in surprise and asked why he undressed. Xiao Xinyu took out a small blade and said that it was to cure her. After that, he plunged the blade into his chest and said that only in this way could he give her his blood. Someone pulled out a blade from his chest, blood poured out. He said that now she should drink it. The girl immediately became embarrassed and began to say that she would never do such things. However, Xiao Xinyu approached her and said that his blood could protect her heart. The girl understood that he was telling the truth, and she straightened her hair, thinking that there was no way back anyway. She began to lick the blood from the chest of her new master with her tongue. This brought her some money. She thought that some kind of power was filling her. When all this was over, Xiao Xinyu dressed again and looked at the fox and said that for a while, this will help the Forbidden One, and that is why he wants to know. Her forgotten name explained after all. Now her master. The girl replied that her name was Delu. However, the master could address her as a fox. After that, she stood up and said that if Xiao Xinyu himself said that he was now her master, then she asked for an explanation because of the fifth. How he knew that she was inflicted early by a purebred dragon. Xiao Xinyu thought that the fox was clearly somehow connected to the missing dragons, and it was clearly not without reason that it was impossible that she would be the one to make it clear what was going on here. Xiao Xinyu looked down and replied that he wouldn't lie. His eyes had changed after being infused with dragon blood 2 months ago. Right after that, he added that now, when he concentrates, he will see a panel with information about the animals as if it were a system. And with this system, he was able to find out all of her injuries. When Xiao Xinyu concentrated, the fox thought that his eyes were very similar to the legendary demon god's eyes. According to rumors, these eyes can provide all the information about any beast. However, this is surprising because Xiao Xinyu is just an ordinary person. All this time she was silently thinking, and finally Xiao Xinyu asked why the fox was silent. She weighed all the pros and cons. However, she came to the conclusion that it didn't matter now because Xiao Xinyu was her new master, and if it really was the eyes of the demon god, then it was even better. The girl sat down on a stone and said that our hero was very lucky. Most likely his eyes changed under the influence of dragon blood, and became the eyes of a demonic god. Xiao Xinyu asked, "Is this not a system?" To which the girl replied that this is just fiction. After all, Xiao Xinyu is not a hero from books, and he has the right to stop reading so many useless fantasies, because what he sees is just a visualization of the abilities of the eyes of the demon god. Xiao Xinyu thought for a moment, because this did not explain why he heard some voice that bound him to lift the crystal in order to allow his beast to be reborn. The first time it happened was after the Shadow Dragon's attack. This voice pointed to a crystal that it said would awaken the Storm Dog's bloodline. During the exam, Xiao Xinyu gave him a crystal, and the wolf did evolve into a hellish wolf. While Xiao Xinyu was thinking about this, one of the beasts discovered this cave and screamed loudly. The fox immediately took its master by the arms and ordered them to stand still if he wanted to live. A huge lava tiger appeared in front of them, causing Xiao Xinyu to fall off the cliff. Noticing the approaching danger, Xiao Xinyu said that he didn't expect that this monster would find them even here. The lava tiger rushed to attack, but Xiao Xinyu and the fox tried to dodge. The fox immediately spread all her tails and said with a smile that even though she was wounded, she still would not allow some creature to growl at her. The tiger immediately changed its victim and attacked her. Lying under this tiger, the girl said that he did not dare attack the empress. Suddenly, our hero's gaze changed and the tiger froze in place. An instant later, his entire body was destroyed at the cellular level. Xiao Xinyu looked at the fox and said with a smile that they were safe now. But as soon as he uttered these words, consciousness left him. Xiao Xinyu found himself inside his consciousness, in front of a huge dragon. Xiao Xinyu immediately stood up and asked who this dragon was and where he was. The dragon laughed and asked, "Has Xiao Xinyu already forgotten him?" After all, it was he who helped his beasts evolve. And thanks to the dragon's instructions, Xiao Xinyu found that blood-awakening crystal. Xiao Xinyu stood up and looked him straight in the eyes and asked, "Could it really be that voice that led him to the crystal?" The dragon replied that he was awakened by blood, but he himself did not know who he was. Xiao Xinyu immediately remembered the moment when the blood of an ordinary monster fell into his eyes. The dragon approached our hero and said that he knew a way to achieve greatness. Xiao Xinyu asked how someone who didn't even know who he was could help him. The dragon opened the system in front of the owner's nose and said that Xiao Xinyu had already seen his abilities. Xiao Xinyu looked around and added that the dragon still didn't answer where they were. The dragon thought for a while and said that it was the master's consciousness, because while he was unconscious, the dragon thought that this was a great moment to meet. Our heroes wanted to answer something, but the dragon added that it was time to wake up. When Xiao Xinyu woke up, he saw that he was in the hospital. The first thing he asked himself was how he ended up here, since he was in a cave. Turning onto his right side, Xiao Xinyu saw the teacher and headmistress in front of him. Xiao Xinyu immediately stood up and apologized for making them worry, and also added that the last thing he remembers is a cave near the cliff. The director asked him to calm down and explained that the rescue team found our hero unconscious nearby. The director also added that a corpse of a lava tiger was also found near our hero, 100 meters from the place where our hero was rescued. Xiao Xinyu said that he had no idea how it was related since he was unconscious. Later, he smiled and asked, did she really think that a student like him could defeat such a strong monster? The headmistress thought for a moment and replied that Xiao Xinyu need not worry, because the academy would conduct a thorough investigation and sort out the situation. The teacher took a few steps forward and said that in the mountain test, Xiao Xinyu and Murong had gotten an S+ and also set a new academy record, so it was better to focus on recovery and prepare for the newcomer ranking competition this weekend. By the way, the elders left the room. A fox appeared from our hero's mark. Xiao Xinyu looked at her and said that he had already begun to fear that she had disappeared. The girl looked at her new master and explained to him that he had sacrificed his blood to save her, and then lost consciousness and suffered severe wounds. And the rescue team arrived on time, and she didn't want to be seen, so she hid. After finishing her explanation, she asked, was that fall from the cliff an accident? Xiao Xinyu remembered his nasty opponent and said that he knew very well who caused this accident. After this, our hero's look changed, and he confidently added that this time this guy would not get off so easily. Let's move on to the Wang family's office. The younger one ran up to his father with a frightened face and declared that something terrible had happened. The father looked at his son and asked him to pull himself together and tell everything in order. The boy showed the phone and announced that Xiao Xinyu had survived. The frightened boy said that Xiao Xinyu would not leave this alone and would definitely take revenge. Because even the Heaven Guild supported him, the man adjusted his glasses and said that they had nothing to do with this accidental incident. After that, he stood up and said that even if Xiao Xinyu suspected them, he did not have any solid evidence. After that, he took out some artifact and asked his son to give it to him, saying that if he starts to complain, he would just have to remove it. At this time, Xiao Xinyu was already lying at home, ordering. When suddenly his phone rang, Xiao Xinyu immediately wondered who could not sleep at such a time. Picking up the phone, Xiao Xinyu heard the voice of his new friend, who was endlessly happy and admired the fact that Xiao Xinyu was able to survive. Xiao Xinyu smiled and said that everyone was really worried about him. The young man also added that the freshman tournament had been postponed, but he was completely confident that Xiao Xinyu would still take first place. Xiao Xinyu was surprised and asked if the tournament was really postponed because of him. The person on the other end of the line suddenly said that Xiao Xinyu probably doesn't know, but he's been missing. And now, the most discussed topic and the academy even declared a state of emergency and organized a large-scale search, which is why classes were postponed. Let me tell you a little about the freshman tournament. This is the main event of the Azure Dragon Academy that is held every year. All participants are divided into groups, and the severity of the matches is determined randomly. Once the 8 finalists have been determined, the competition will begin for the 3 prize places. It is a tense and exciting competition where the future of each participant is at stake. Xiao Xinyu said that he understood everything and then hung up, wishing him good night. Xiao Xinyu looked at his reflection, thinking that good results in the tournament would attract the attention of the academy and its financial support. Another minute of facts. The skills of animals depend on the level of spiritual energy, and the owner, the stronger the animal, the more spiritual energy is needed. And with the help of the academy's resources, it is possible to significantly speed up its replenishment and development. This will avoid a repeat of the situation when the fox's skills are full and depleted the spiritual energy of our hero. However, now Xiao Xinyu thought, and then that he would need this help, not only for this, but also to get rid of this nasty family that was always putting spokes in his wheels. Xiao Xinyu lay down on the bed and thought that in order to use this fox's skills, he absolutely must not stand still. However, now the question arises of how to quickly increase spiritual energy before the freshman tournament begins. With these thoughts, Xiao Xinyu fell asleep and found himself once again inside his consciousness, alone with the dragon. The dragon looked at his master carefully and asked, "Is Xiao Xinyu trying to find an easy way out?" Xiao Xinyu smiled and said that if he had such help, then why not take advantage of this opportunity? The dragon said that he wanted to return to memories, and if Xiao Xinyu helped him with this, then he would do everything in his power to help his master. After that, the dragon opened the system in front of our hero and said that only deep meditation would allow him to penetrate the space of consciousness and communicate with the dragon. But this is associated with risks, so the dragon upgraded the data panel based on the game systems from the human world. So now Xiao Xinyu will even be able to buy the necessary items through the store. The dragon also added that in order for Xiao Xinyu not to relax and not to forget about the return of his memories, he will periodically issue tasks through the system, for the completion of which Xiao Xinyu will receive points and other rewards. Having finished with this, the dragon gave our hero a dragon spiritual pill that instantly increases spiritual energy by 10 times, but after 5 minutes it drains all strength and causes weakness. The dragon said that this is exactly what our hero needs. However, it has very strong side effects. Therefore, this pill must be used with extreme caution. After thinking for a while, the dragon added that Xiao Xinyu could consider this a gift, but in the future, he would have to earn money for what he wanted to buy. After finishing these explanations, the dragon said that now he needed to recover, so Xiao Xinyu should not disturb him unless absolutely necessary. Xiao Xinyu said goodbye to the dragon. When Xiao Xinyu opened his eyes, it was already past 4 in the morning, and he quickly got dressed and said that it was time for him to go to class. Sister said that it was very strange because he had just recovered, and in his place she would have rested. However, Xiao Xinyu added that he could not miss a single day of school because the freshman tournament was coming soon, namely this evening. On the way, Xiao Xinyu saw a strange announcement. He tore it off and it said that the nine-tailed fox was wanted. The form of the king of beasts, the reward was 3 billion, she was accused of theft. As soon as Xiao Xinyu found out about this, he immediately called her and asked her directly. Could it be that she had deceived him? The fox turned away and said that she didn't hide anything. Xiao Xinyu just didn't ask her. Xiao Xinyu explained that she was wanted by the Empress's personal order. And this was not some small thing. She should have told him about it right away. The fox turned away and said that this did not change anything, and if Xiao Xinyu regretted making a contract with her, he could hand her over for a reward. Xiao Xinyu calmed down and said that he was now her master, and he would like her to no longer hide anything and trust him. Hearing these words, the fox immediately came close to our hero and explained that the Empress had appointed such a reward for her because of this crystal. Xiao Xinyu asked what it was, and the fox explained that it was the ultimate treasure of dragons, a dragon tear. It is said that pure-blooded dragons have 3 great treasures: the scale sword, the Dragon King's whiskers, and the dragon's tear. The scale sword and the Dragon King's mustache are artifacts with destructive, offensive power that can be used in battle. However, the dragon tear has no combat use. However, it is made up of the tears of 10,000 pure-blooded giant dragons. And if you use all its power, you can turn back time and return to the past. Xiao Xinyu was incredibly surprised. So after that, he thought about it and said that he had wanted to ask her about this for a long time. Previously, the fox said that Xiao Xinyu could feel free to ask any question, after which Xiao Xinyu said that in fact, dragons were completely destroyed 300 years ago. So how did it happen that they appeared again? The fox was about to give an answer, but suddenly disappeared. Xiao Xinyu looked back and saw Murong and her brother standing behind him. The brother closed his eyes and said that Xiao Xinyu last time got out straight from the present up. After that, he wished to be more careful because next time he really could be killed. The sister looked at her brother and was surprised because her brother was clearly worried about our hero, but still behaved too rudely. The brother looked angrily at our hero and said that after he fell off the cliff, his sister was so worried that she couldn't even eat. And once she saw that Xiao Xinyu was completely fine, she immediately ate several large portions. The brother wanted to continue talking about it, but his sister shut him up. Xiao Xinyu said with a smile that he would not make this girl worry anymore, and added that they could head to the academy together. Brother Murong looked seriously into our hero's eyes and said that they were not close enough to go together, and besides, Xiao Xinyu stole his sister's points for killing a monster in the mountain trial, so they still haven't forgiven him for that. With these words, the two left, and Xiao Xinyu was trying to find an answer to the question, why did they even talk to him then if they still hadn't forgiven him? The school day ended, and finally the event for which everyone had gathered today began. In the middle of the arena stood a man who was watching the fights and said that today, the annual tournament of first-year students would begin. Immediately after these words, the man announced that all first-year students must draw lots to determine the order of the fights. Everyone obediently stood in line. Junior Wang kept his eyes on our hero and thought that he really was able to return safe and sound. However, the guy calmed himself with the thought that this time, Xiao Xinyu would definitely never be able to get back on his feet again. The next one announced Van. The guy slowly approached the box. While he was walking, everyone was discussing the fact that according to rumors, this guy was taking advantage of his father's status and pestering girls in the library. But in the arena, he was beaten so badly that he lost all dignity. Someone then started talking about how this guy was the biggest disgrace of the Azure Dragon Academy. Wang heard all this, but he thought with a smile that despite the humiliation that Xiao Xinyu had inflicted on him today, everything would be fine, because Xiao Xinyu had to die. The referee announced that the first fight would be Xiao Xinyu versus Wang Yan. The students could not believe such a coincidence and said that fate itself had brought the sworn enemies together. In fact, Van simply cheated, and now he was thinking that his father need not worry, because he would definitely live up to all his expectations. Wang walked up to his opponent and said that today he would personally destroy his pet in the arena. After the welcoming speech, Xiao Xinyu walked up to the arena. Brother Murong asked his sister why she was always looking at that guy. The girl replied that she was surprised that her brother did not feel it. The brother was also surprised and asked what she was talking about. The girl thought for a while and said that she strongly felt that after Xiao Xinyu fell off the cliff, he became much stronger. The director also clearly felt this and wondered what our hero had to go through. Meanwhile, the referee announced the start of the first fight. The students immediately summoned their animals. The referee said that they had displayed information about the animals on the electronic board, obtained using a scanning device, and that anyone who wanted to could see it. Murong tensed up and thought that there was something wrong with this aura, because judging from the Hellstorm Wolf's aura, his level was clearly above the first stage of the initial form. But the scanning device could not be wrong. That is to say, he was indeed at the first stage of the initial form. The girl thought, trying to understand what the problem was. Suddenly, she realized that Xiao Xinyu was deliberately suppressing the level of his beast in order to use this battle to break through. Meanwhile, the battle between the two was going on according to the old scenario. The hellish wolf was again in the shadows and dealt an unexpected blow. The referee said into the microphone that this was simply an incredible battle, and everything was enveloping, sometimes freezing cold, sometimes unbearable heat. Finally, Xiao Xinyu used his signature move. The referee immediately announced that Six-Fingered Ice Leopard had fallen into oblivion and could not use his abilities. This was simply unbelievable. However, Van asked in a haughty tone, "Do we heroes really think that his opponent is so stupid that he would fall for the same trick twice?" With these words, the tiger seemed to grin, and a pill could be seen in its mouth, which he immediately bit into and swallowed, his appearance instantly changing. But Murong didn't pay any attention to it at all. She was trying to understand how Xiao Xinyu had become so strong in such a short time. Xiao Xinyu didn't understand why his beast had suddenly become so strong. Did that scoundrel really use a forbidden potion to temporarily strengthen his beast? Xiao Xinyu immediately asked this question. However, instead of answering, Van's beast simply rushed forward like this. Wang shouted loudly that this was not all, and used another skill. Called the Ice Hammer, it instantly hit our hero's beast, and completely immobilized him. The others couldn't understand why this ice leopard had suddenly become so strong. Wang raised his finger with a smile and said that last time he gave in. However, now Xiao Xinyu would see his full power. Meanwhile, the father of this guy was smilingly talking to the director about how his son's talent was no less than that of this student named Xiao Xinyu. However, the headmistress thought that this ice leopard had become so strong that even a blind person would notice something was wrong. The referee shouted into the microphone that Xiao Xinyu was currently in a real situation, and if this continued, the hellish storm wolf would not only lose but also receive serious injuries. Xiao Xinyu listened to this with a smile and wondered, did everyone really think that his Black Fang accidentally killed more than 100 magical beasts on the mountain during the test? Immediately after, Xiao Xinyu ordered his beast to use a skill called Hellfire Lotus, and the beast immediately broke its shackles. And also with the help of this skill, he attacked his opponent. The teacher shouted that he didn't expect anything less than this, and the director thought that Xiao Xinyu was simply incredible. After all, he used a combat skill that was only available to those who were fully developed. This meant that his future was simply limitless. Father Wang continued to think that Xiao Xinyu was growing too fast and that he should not be left alive under any circumstances. In the future, Xiao Xinyu would become a huge problem. The referee was absolutely delighted. He said that despite the fact that the Hellstorm Wolf was only in his initial form, he was already able to master a fire element skill of such a high level. With these words, Xiao Xinyu used his final blow and hit the target straight on. Ice Leopard remained unconscious on Earth. There was a deathly silence in the stands. No one could believe that Xiao Xinyu was so strong. The referee raised his left hand and loudly announced that Xiao Xinyu had won. Everyone immediately started rejoicing and saying that this guy was a real monster. Also, the information on the table about the hellish wolf has changed, and now it has reached the third stage of the initial form. Wang knelt down. As the referee spoke, Xiao Xinyu had set an unprecedented record. For the first time since the Azure Dragon Academy started holding the freshman tournament, the beast was able to climb 2 steps right in the arena. And the person who caused this miracle was Xiao Xinyu. Xiao Xinyu stroked his dog, thinking inwardly that after Black Fang killed dozens of magical beasts on the mountain, he encountered the lava tiger and, after experiencing many death-defying trials, Black Fang was already on the threshold of evolution. Xiao Xinyu specifically let the ice leopard use its abilities to corner Black Fang so that it could overcome another obstacle. After explaining all this to himself, Xiao Xinyu heard Wang's father shouting that everything should be supported by evidence, but the committee did not have any. Xiao Xinyu was surprised by such a noise and decided to go and take a look. Xiao Xinyu came closer and heard Wang's father saying that the rules of the competition stated that the fight would continue until a winner was determined, and the 6-legged ice leopard ended up dead, and that was more than enough evidence. The other teachers also said that although Xiao Xinyu is talented, he is cruel and ruthless, and they cannot keep him in the academy, so he must be expelled immediately. The principal said that the administration will carefully study everything and make a verdict. But until the truth becomes clear, she will not spare anyone who tries to slander her student. Immediately after these words, she ordered that the body of the ice leopard be brought so that the veterinarian could perform an autopsy. This order was immediately carried out, and half an hour later, one of the veterinarians said that the internal organs of this beast were badly damaged, and this was probably because of the Lotus of Hellfire. Wang smiled because he had bought the academy's veterinarian in advance, knowing that in such a situation the rector might resort to this method of verification. However, Xiao Xinyu suddenly appeared and asked, "Does the honorable deputy really think that a murderer would act like this in front of so many people?" Xiao Xinyu took a few more steps forward and said that the Hellfire Lotus only attacks the soul, and this leopard died of internal bleeding. The others began to doubt and say that the guy was telling the truth, and there was no point in striking so openly. And in addition, a spiritual attack does not leave physical damage. Xiao Xinyu looked at the doctor and asked him, "Is he really sure of his diagnosis?" The doctor was clearly nervous. Xiao Xinyu leaned over him and quietly said that it was not worth risking his career for a small bribe. After that, Xiao Xinyu stood up and said that since the matter is extremely serious, Xiao Xinyu asks to conduct a blood test on this ice leopard to check everything again. 10 minutes later, when it was all over, the doctor suddenly ran up to the director and said something very quickly. The director didn't understand anything and asked to repeat it. And then the guy explained that in fact, this pet died due to the effect of the rampage pill. Wang immediately loudly declared that this worthless doctor was lying. He fell to his knees in front of the headmistress and said that he would never in his life give his beast such crap. But the doctor said that the test results were right in front of her, and he could say with certainty that the ice leopard had taken the rampage pill. This drug puts magical beasts in a state of rage, enhancing their abilities, but it has many side effects. The director looked at the autopsy results and asked what Wang would do now. Melky began to beg his father for help, but the others said that they could assure him that the deputy's son was so cruel that he even gave his magical beast this poison. Wang's father approached the director and asked to give his son another chance. But the woman replied that he should not forget about his position, because he is not only a father but also the deputy rector of the Azure Dragon Academy. Therefore, if men continue to plan to cover for their son, then he can pack his things and go home. Van's father was aware of the whole situation, and through clenched teeth he said that since his son had broken the rules of the academy and given his beast magic, they were obliged to expel him. The little boy quickly signed to his father and wanted to ask something. However, his father replied in a stern voice that the fact of using the forbidden pill had already been established, and this boy simply left no choice. But also quietly, father said that he would definitely avenge his son. After this, he added in a loud voice that it was necessary to throw this scoundrel out of the academy and throw his son away from himself. After this incident, the competition continued, and a few hours later the top 8 were announced. Many people discussed the fact that Xiao Xinyu became a real dark horse among the newcomers, because this guy without connections and wealth managed to enter the top 8, and one can say that he is a real genius. After all, everyone who saw his fight immediately refused to participate further and immediately created. Brother Murong looked at his sister and said that since Xiao Xinyu entered the top 8 and also stole a lot of points from her during the mountain test, if they met, he would definitely avenge his sister. The girl thought for a bit and said that she shouldn't do that because she herself wanted to fight him. Meanwhile, Xiao Xinyu was talking to his friend about how at least one of them was able to break into the top 8. Wang's father looked at him angrily and thought that he shouldn't rejoice too soon. After all, once Xiao Xinyu returned home, the smile would disappear from his face. Together with his friend, Xiao Xinyu celebrated for getting into the top 8. And I finally got home late at night. As soon as he was inside, he immediately shouted loudly, "Why is the door broken?" After that, he glanced around his apartment and saw that there was not a single living spot left. A little girl he had saved quickly ran up to him and announced that her sister had been kidnapped by some masked man, and also added that he had left a letter. Xiao Xinyu immediately picked up the paper from the table and saw that it was written that if Xiao Xinyu wanted to save his sister, he should go to the mountains. Xiao Xinyu headed towards these mountains at full speed, thinking that no matter who dared to touch his sister, he would definitely avenge her. But when he got to the right place, he saw that his sister was completely fine. Standing next to her was Wang, who was smiling and saying that Xiao Xinyu could calm down because she was still alive. Xiao Xinyu immediately ordered her to be released, but the villain merely smiled. Xiao Xinyu replied that he had a conflict with only one person recently, but this guy clearly doesn't have the courage or the impossibility to kidnap a person, which means that the person in front of him is his father. The villain took off his hood and said that if Xiao Xinyu were his son, he would have made him the strongest young hunter in the entire Dragon Empire. But life turned out differently. And because Xiao Xinyu injured his son, he must die. With these words, the man summoned his pet, the stone guardian of the earth. It was a demonic bear. Father Wang smiled and said that his pet has the form of a beast king. It is constantly in a state of absolute defense, which makes it invulnerable to physical attacks, and it can also neutralize any control skills. The villains laughed and said that this is where our hero's path ends. Xiao Xinyu smiled and said that he was afraid that the rector would be disappointed today. After that, Xiao Xinyu raised his hand and declared that he actually had more than one beast. Right there in front of him there was a fox, who sadly said that her owner does not allow her to sleep well, and he should think about moral compensation for her. Xiao Xinyu ordered her to go and kill this bear, and the girl said that if she killed it, she would immediately go back to sleep. Xiao Xinyu said with a smile that she would sleep as much as she wanted, and the girl smiled. The man, meanwhile, was thinking that this spiritual beast was so terrifying that if he didn't do something right now, it would be the end of him. Therefore, the demonic bear immediately rushed to attack. However, with one movement, she froze him and immobilized him. The villain couldn't believe his eyes. He asked if this was really the same royal-level fox that was wanted all over the country. After this, the villain looked at our hero and declared that if it became known that he had made a contract with this beast, then it would be the end of him. However, Xiao Xinyu smiled and explained that just because he summoned this beast, it didn't mean that his opponent would leave here alive. Wang immediately defended himself and said that the gap between them was too great and could not be overcome by just one king-level beast. Immediately after these words, the demonic bear gained freedom from the shackles. He also added with a smile that, of course, Lisa is very strong, but this will not change the fact that Xiao Xinyu is only a 1-star. The villain prepared to use the skill and said that he was now showing the difference in strength between them. The demon bear immediately enveloped everything around in black fog. Beasts with the attribute of darkness must feed on the blood of people or other beasts to replenish their energy. Xiao Xinyu knew this very well and pointed his finger at his opponent, saying that he understood that it was because of him that the low-level beasts began to disappear in this city several years ago. The man removed the mask from his face and showed the tattoo and said that it was a great honor to die from the fangs of his bear. Xiao Xinyu was horrified when he saw the red skull on his cheek. After all, this is a guild specializing in training hunters with the attribute of darkness. It is even included in the list of evil terrorist organizations, where the Red Skull is one of the 5 largest guilds of darkness. Xiao Xinyu smiled and asked what would happen if everyone found out that the vice principal of the Azure Dragon Academy was actually a member of this terrible guild. To which the villain replied that if he had already revealed his identity, then Xiao Xinyu would definitely not leave here alive. The fox looked at her master and said to her that with his current energy reserves, she could not use any combat skills. However, Xiao Xinyu smiled, took out a pill, and said that she did not need to worry, because he never entered into a duel unless he was confident of his victory. After these words, Xiao Xinyu immediately swallowed this pill, and his spiritual energy increased by tens of times, after which the fox took her true form and threw the demonic bear away from herself. And also, with the help of her skill, she broke through his defense and Van himself. After being seriously injured, the man grabbed his head and shouted that he could not lose here. With these words, he disappeared from the scene of the crime, leaving our hero alone with his pets. When it was all over, Xiao Xinyu felt his strength leaving him and realized that he would have to pay for eating that pill. As soon as Xiao Xinyu lost consciousness and fell, the fox immediately ran up to him and hit him on the cheek, saying that he couldn't fall asleep here. She tried to wake him up when suddenly someone grabbed her by the throat. It was our hero's sister. The fox immediately thought that there was a terrible smell coming from this woman. Meanwhile, our hero's sister said that she couldn't even imagine that her brother would be able to make a contract with a magical beast in the form of the king of beasts. However, while the sister was saying this, the fox clearly felt the dragon's power. And I thought that I had never encountered such a powerful force before. She asked in horror why such a terrible dragon power was coming from her master's sister. The sister asked to receive it and added that she didn't need to know it at all, after which she let her go and leaned over her brother, saying that now she was just his sister. She placed her hand on his chest and uttered some kind of spell. The fox became nervous and asked if everything would be okay with her owner, to which the sister replied that it looked like her brother had taken a medicine that temporarily increased his spiritual energy and was now experiencing side effects. By the way, she buttoned up her clothes and said that the fox should not worry, because he only needed 4 days to fully recover. After these words, the girl stood up, and she used one of her skills, whistling a beautiful melody. The fox couldn't believe her eyes, because it was the Whisper of Dragons, a combat skill unique to purebred dragons. It allows you to restore any entity in the world thanks to a special melody. Everything around seemed to be blossoming, and when the girl finished, she said with a smile that now there was no trace left of today's battle, and no one except them would know what happened here. The fox, noticing the strange appearance, said that as far as she knew, among purebred dragons there was only one with such strange scales, and his name is Chaos. Our hero's sister took one step forward and said that she didn't care that the fox was wanted by order of the Empress of the Dragon Kingdom. But if she had made a contract with her brother, then it was better not to betray him. She also added that if Lisa doesn't listen to her brother, then all her tails will be cut off. And finally, she asked not to tell her brother about what she saw today. When Xiao Xinyu regained consciousness, he looked back and saw his sister and director standing in front of him. The sister immediately fell on him and said that she was incredibly happy that he was okay. Xiao Xinyu smiled and asked her to get off because he was having trouble breathing. The girl apologized, got up, and said that that night, when she woke up and discovered that they were in the mountains and her brother was lying next to her, she immediately took him on her back and carried him out of there. And despite the fact that she did not know what happened, she saw that her brother was all sweaty and unconscious, so she immediately carried him down to help. I say he smiled and thought that his sister didn't notice. Nothing strange because the fox removed all the clues. After a short pause, the director said that since Xiao Xinyu had been unconscious for 3 whole days, he had missed the semifinals and finals of the freshman ranking tournament. The director said that the first and second places were taken by the natives of Murong, and the absence of our hero is considered a voluntary refusal to participate. The director also added that Deputy Wang went missing 3 days ago. Xiao Xinyu tensed up and thought that they were probably already starting to suspect something. The hero's sister thought that if the headmistress thought about harming her brother, she would kill him immediately. The director explained that she believed that Xiao Xinyu was innocent and would continue to investigate the matter. However, the Azure Dragon Academy was now looking for a new vice director. The principal sat down next to him and said that she had come here not only to check on her student's condition, but also to inform him about the Supernova competition. The Supernova competition is a major event jointly organized by the Academy of the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Red Crane, and Black Tortoise, with each school selecting 3 of their most talented newcomers to represent their academies. And if we talk about the most talented student of this academy, everyone will name Yaning Shuang. However, at last year's competition, she lost to Li from White Tiger Academy and only took 2nd place. The director looked at our hero and said that she wanted him to become one of the representatives of the Azure Dragon Academy and restore their honor. She also added that for the student, this would also be a great chance to make up for the missed opportunity at the freshman rating tournament. Xiao Xinyu said that he was happy. However, he didn't even know the rules of this competition. The director immediately announced that the first rule was that the participant must have at least 2 battle beasts. The second participant must be at least a 2nd-star beast hunter. After that, she took our hero by the shoulders and said that the competition would be held next month and she believed that Xiao Xinyu would be able to qualify by the time it started. Xiao Xinyu thought that he was surprised that the director believed in him so much, and because of this, he could not let her down. Moreover, he wanted to see the strength of the White Tiger Academy that was able to defeat Yening Shuang. Xiao Xinyu smiled and said that the director didn't have to worry, because the first place in the competition would belong to him and the Azure Dragon Academy. When Xiao Xinyu recovered, he went into the forest, thinking that the participants of last year's competition had made a contract with 2 beasts, and that was the minimum. Xiao Xinyu thought that he also had 2 beasts. However, one of them was wanted all over the country, and it was impossible to summon in an open battle, the fox. And besides, the Black Fang was only an entry-level Hellstorm Wolf now. It would be difficult for him to participate in such a high-level tournament. I looked around with the thought that the time had finally come to become stronger. Immediately after these thoughts, he summoned his Black Fang. After that, he opened his inventory and took out everything he needed, thinking that he was a good man and had prepared everything in advance. Because after the director left, Xiao Xinyu immediately checked out of the hospital and bought several fire supplements and evolution materials from the Heavenly Guild for his entire Dr. Hunter salary. Some of these artifacts are rewards from the university's challenge. Xiao Xinyu threw all of this into a huge pile, and after stroking his pet, said that he could fly into all of this. Fang pounced and began to absorb all of these artifacts, and Xiao Xinyu watched with a smile. After which he called the fox and said that during the evolution this boy might have a breakdown, so she should protect them. As Xiao Xinyu predicted, the Black Fang began to emit incredible destructive energy that could affect our heroes. Because Xiao Xinyu felt everything that his dog felt, he fell to the ground in pain. The path of evolution is always associated with suffering, so she slowly rose and called her system, in which he saw that there was still a little time left until the end of evolution. But when the evolution progress reached 99%, it stopped. Xiao Xinyu became nervous and wondered if he had failed. But as soon as Xiao Xinyu thought about it, all the pain went away. And a second later, a Black Fang in a new form appeared in front of him. Now he had reached a mature form and his bloodline was epic. His title had also changed. He was now a wolf of the underworld. Xiao Xinyu looked at the system and happily said that Black Fang had a new attribute, Demon. The fox was also surprised that Black Fang's demonic attribute had awakened, after which she looked at her master with the thought that this guy is truly a unique hunter. Xiao Xinyu happily hugged his new beast and said that now that it had become even stronger, everything would be just fine for them. Immediately after that, Xiao Xinyu went to his so-called sister and said that in order to participate in the competition, he couldn't do without another beast, and she happily agreed to help him. Together they went to the animal market, where the girl said that Xiao Xinyu could choose whatever he wanted and she would pay for it. When they walked inside, there was a nice girl at the checkout who greeted the lady. However, the redhead replied that in 1 month her brother would be participating in the competition, so they came here to find a suitable beast for the contracts. The saleswoman immediately smiled and said that she would help find the right beast. They first approached the spider. She explained that it was a demonic red spider. Its attack is much higher than that of other beasts of the same level. After that, they approached the shadow tigress, and the saleswoman said that she was very fast and dealt increased damage from stealth. But the redhead explained to her that they did not need cheap options, and asked to show high-class animals. The saleswoman smiled and said that if the lady said so, then she would not hide the treasure from them. With these words, they entered the room with the first-class beasts. Xiao Xinyu looked back and saw excellent beasts in front of him, but none of them had a hidden bloodline. The saleswoman noticed his face and said that there were so many top-class animals here, but he was still unhappy. Didn't he really like anyone? She said that he could state the requirements and she would order the goods especially for him, but immediately after that, one of the workers appeared and said that new goods had just been delivered. The man went inside and showed 2 elves, saying that this was the best thing he had seen. Xiao Xinyu approached them and said that he heard that this type of beast was considered useless. The redhead immediately explained to her friend that if they were sold as fighting animals, then of course no one would take them. But as pets, they would be snapped up in an instant. Xiao Xinyu walked close to one of them and saw that she had a hidden angel bloodline. Xiao Xinyu immediately looked at the redhead and said that he was going to buy her. The saleswoman laughed and asked if he was sure about this. Xiao Xinyu replied that he was completely sure and wanted her to become his beast. When all this was over, our hero had a third beast. They went out into the forest, and Xiao Xinyu opened the cage saying that he would not cause harm. Right after that, he gave her 1 pill and said that if she ate it, her illness would heal quickly. Her name was Pixie Fairy. She immediately ate this pill and restored her body. Xiao Xinyu extended his finger towards her and asked if she would agree to make a blood contract with him and become his beast. The fairy immediately grabbed his finger and Xiao Xinyu was delighted. after which he bit his finger, and a drop of blood dripped from it. The fairy immediately replied that from that moment on they were connected forever. The fairy flew up and Xiao Xinyu said with a smile that if they had made a blood contract, then she would accept him as her master. Xiao Xinyu also said that he almost forgot, and took out the bloodline awakening crystal that I got especially for her. Xiao Xinyu explained that if she ate it, she would be able to become stronger and evolve. The fairy immediately took this crystal and bit off a piece of it, after which she suddenly felt ill, and her stomach was cramping and her head was splitting into pieces from the pain. Xiao Xinyu said that we need to hold out for just a little while longer. And a few seconds later, a bright flash illuminated the forest. A fox immediately appeared and asked, "What happened and is everything okay?" Xiao Xinyu replied that everything was fine and thanked the fox for saving him. And after a few more minutes, a fairy finally appeared from this pillar of light. Xiao Xinyu shouted with a smile that the hidden bloodline had awakened and was now a sacred angel of light. Xiao Xinyu read everything in the description and learned that when he became a 10th star hunter, she would be able to evolve into a 12-winged seraphim. Xiao Xinyu took a few more steps and closely examined her entire body, and also added that from now on, she would be called Freya. The angel immediately landed on the ground and bowed her knee. Xiao Xinyu said that from now on they would fight side by side. The fox looked at her master and said that it turned out that he had just taken another step towards participating in the supernova competition. Xiao Xinyu added with a smile that the next step was to become a 2nd star hunter. With these thoughts, he went to his teacher. Xiao Xinyu explained the whole situation and said that it needed to be done as quickly as possible. The teacher wondered why the youth were so eager to grow up, since the Murong siblings had also passed the 2nd driving test 3 days ago. The teacher also thought that the Black Fang had evolved to the 1st stage of its mature form. Perhaps this really did meet the requirements of the exam. The teacher said that if the level of spiritual power meets the standard, then he will allow you to pass the exam. Xiao Xinyu smiled and immediately took the device that calculates strength. After a few seconds, it showed 2.583. The teacher immediately approached our hero and said that none of his former students, even the most talented ones, had spiritual strength reach such values, only 1,500. And then only when their beasts entered a mature form, so he allows him to take this exam. The next morning, Xiao Xinyu began to take the exam. On the earpiece, the director said that Xiao Xinyu had arrived at the entrance to the Blood Mist Canyon. The exam for 3-star hunters was about to begin, and he needed to prepare. The teacher on the earpiece added that the Blood Mist Canyon was full of magical beasts, and if Xiao Xinyu realized that he couldn't cope, he shouldn't be a hero and just send out a distress signal. Xiao Xinyu got ready and said that he was completely ready. The director explained to him that his task was to go through the canyon, and if he successfully reached the exit, the exam would be considered passed. Immediately after hearing this information, Xiao Xinyu jumped down and opened his parachute. In the observation room stood our hero's teacher and the director, who were discussing the fact that he had already entered the canyon of bloody fog. And in order to pass through it, the examinees must first fight with iron-toothed crocodiles. Then you need to escape from the bloody demonic spiders that live in the demon cave, but among them there are sometimes individuals of the 3rd stage of the mature form. Meanwhile, Xiao Xinyu finally landed, right in the center of the crocodile cluster. As soon as Xiao Xinyu saw them, he immediately summoned Freya. The teacher and the principal were incredibly surprised when they saw that our hero had another pet. The teacher couldn't believe his eyes because Xiao Xinyu was able to form a contract with the mythical Angel of Light. He looked at the headmistress and said that it simply couldn't be because they hadn't met for many years. The headmistress thought for a moment and said that, according to rumors, 2 days ago, Xiao Xinyu bought a water fairy in the magic door shop. To which the teacher replied that it was simply impossible because they were lower beasts, and the sacred Angel of Light had a part of the bloodline. The director reminded him that at first, the wolf of the underworld was just a storm catfish. The teacher looked at his student and said that this guy just makes the impossible possible. Meanwhile, Angel destroyed most of the crocodiles with one blow. When they were finished, Xiao Xinyu asked to be led through this swamp. Suddenly, the angel picked him up in her arms and flew up. Xiao Xinyu shouted that it was humiliating and ordered her to quickly put him on the ground. When they arrived, the angel listened to him, and they noticed that the fog in front of them was too thick. Spiders attacked them, but the angel easily cut them down. But these were just children. A second later, a blood demonic spider of the mature form of the 3rd stage was already standing in front of them. Teacher said that despite the dire situation, the holy angel was only in its initial form, but even so, it could ignore the difference in strength and deal damage even to mature special blood demon spiders. When there were too many opponents, Xiao Xinyu decided to summon Black Fang. And accompanied by these two spirit beasts, he easily destroyed the remaining spiders. However, the director in the earpiece reminded him that he couldn't waste time. And to pass the exam, you need to get to the finish line and not kill all the magical beasts. Xiao Xinyu ignored her and entered the battle. And by combining the powers of his pets, he created a deadly tornado. When Xiao Xinyu had already calmed down and thought that the spiders were gone, suddenly the earth trembled under his feet. In front of them was a fully evolved magical beast, a crypto spider. The teacher immediately shouted that Xiao Xinyu should retreat, because Xiao Xinyu would not defeat this guy. However, Xiao Xinyu said that even if God himself stood between him and successfully passing the exam, he would die. And he sent all his strength to destroy this spider with one blow. But this was clearly not enough. The fox also said that Xiao Xinyu should give up this idea because the teacher is right, and he should not go ahead with his current strength because he will not be able to do anything to this one with an injection. Xiao Xinyu said with a smile that he wanted to pass the second Star Hunter exam and subdue this magical beast. But what he wanted even more was to know his limit. Therefore, Xiao Xinyu gave the order to the Black One to sneak up behind this beast and use the Claw of Oblivion. Black Fang carried out the order, but Pook managed to react and throw the dog away from him. Xiao Xinyu and his beasts retreated a little, and then the spider began to spit out poisonous webs. Xiao Xinyu jumped onto the Black Fang and began to dodge. The voice inside was saying that it was not so easy to escape from this enemy and that something had to be thought up. Xiao Xinyu took a closer look and asked why his striped health was gradually decreasing. Xiao Xinyu wondered what had happened. The wound on this spider was not too deep, but the web it released had clearly become weaker. Could it be related to its blood? The angel, meanwhile, said that the Black Fang was wounded and most likely could not withstand it any longer. Xiao Xinyu asked the angel to cover him. And when they jumped up, he saw that the health bar of this spider had decreased again. After that, Xiao Xinyu laughed and said that he finally understood how to fight against this monster. Looked down at Black Fang and ordered him to spit directly at this monster. Black Fang spat, causing the monster to get angry and release his web. Xiao Xinyu ordered the dog to quickly retreat into the shadows and attack when the opportunity arose. Xiao Xinyu looked at the health of this spider again and said that as he thought, this spider uses up its life force when it releases its web, and once it uses up its last thread, its days will be numbered. Xiao Xinyu looked at Dog and ordered him not to take any risks and just wear out their opponent. So, it was as if the dog was playing with this monster. Xiao Xinyu looked at this and ordered me to hold back and activate the demonic power then, while the angel would use the sacred shield of light on Black Fang and remove the negative effects from him. The spirit beasts carried out the plan flawlessly. Meanwhile, there was a teacher and a director on the helicopter. The teacher asked why they hadn't interfered yet, to which the director replied that there was no need to rush, because it seemed that Xiao Xinyu had already found a way to deal with this enemy, and the only question was how long they could hold out for the fifth. At this rate, Xiao Xinyu spent another 7 hours. Xiao Xinyu was clearly exhausted, but he saw that this spider had already lost more than 90% of its health, and even its web had become much lighter. He could not cope with the Black Fang if he was supported by an angel. Therefore, they needed to hold on for a little longer, and they would definitely be able to win. Thinking about it, Xiao Xinyu stopped. So, this is what he understands. What is wrong here? After all living beings instinctively want to survive, so why is this spider, having lost so much blood, still not trying to escape? Is the crypto spider really that furious? Thinking about it a little more, Xiao Xinyu pushed the question there. Why doesn't he leave all the time? Is there some kind of cave here? Are they already inside something valuable? While Xiao Xinyu was thinking about this, the spider attacked him again. But Black Fang repelled this attack. The angel also protected her master. Seeing this, Xiao Xinyu ordered not to worry about him and go on the attack to deal with this monster once and for all. Hearing this order, the Black Fang rushed to attack at full speed and hit the target straight on. The mutilated spider rolled over onto its back, bleeding profusely. Xiao Xinyu finally let out a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground, saying that they had done a great job. After that, he stood up again and said that it was time to find out what was hidden inside this cave, because there definitely had to be something worthwhile there. When they entered, the teacher immediately ordered them to leave immediately. Xiao Xinyu was surprised and said that he had actually already defeated the spider. However, they explained to him that even after death, he could continue to move for some time. Xiao Xinyu immediately looked back and saw that dead spider had risen to his feet. The worst thing about this situation was that this blocked the only exit. The angel immediately rushed forward, despite Xiao Xinyu shouting that she should go back. However, ignoring her master's order, she used her strongest skill and destroyed the spider with one blow. Xiao Xinyu was surprised, but he looked at her and asked, "Did she just master a new skill on her own?" The angel nodded, and Xiao Xinyu immediately hugged her, saying that she was simply incredible. After that, they went inside and saw what this spider was so desperately protecting. The fox, without showing herself, immediately explained that this was the seed of the heavenly soul vine, which had an ancient lineage. Xiao Xinyu picked him up and said that with such a pedigree, it would be very difficult to raise him, and also asked if the fox knew how to do it. The fox thought for a moment and said that of course he knew how, and despite the fact that he had an extremely complex growing process, he needed drops of dew from the feathery grass and the nectar of the magical yellow flower, as well as fertilizer from the excrement of higher form animals. Xiao Xinyu looked at this and said that even though it was just a family, he was more troublesome than the daughter of an aristocrat. Xiao Xinyu thought for a moment and said that the fox was probably familiar with many beasts of higher forms, which she immediately replied that she would not humiliate herself so much and ask others for fertilizer. Xiao Xinyu continued to argue and walked outside, waving his hand at the helicopter. 2 weeks have passed since that day. Xiao Xinyu sat in the arena and thought that the atmosphere and scale of the national competition was simply amazing. While he was thinking about this, brother and sister Murong came up and greeted our hero. Sister Murong sat down next to our hero, and Xiao Xinyu asked how she was doing, to which she replied that her first beast had evolved and reached the second stage of its mature form, and the second had awakened the ability to control lightning. Her brother couldn't believe that she had spoken to another guy herself, and that she had accepted the way he called her so calmly. He grabbed his head with tears in his eyes and thought that girls grow up too quickly. Xiao Xinyu, meanwhile, asked who they were fighting today, to which the girl replied that she didn't know the full results of the draw hadn't been announced yet. The director suddenly appeared and said that the results had already been known for a long time. She picked up the folder and said that the first opponents would be the White Tiger Academy, so they were obliged to destroy them to smithereens. But these words were heard by the headmistress of the White Tiger Academy, who said that she was surprised by such determination. The director of the Azure Dragon asked why Ju was not with his guys, to which she replied that she just wanted to look at their main trump of this year, because she heard that he masterfully fights with fully evolved magical beasts and is able to simultaneously summon creatures of two opposite attributes, hell and heaven. Xiao Xinyu thought that this was the first time he saw the director in an argument with someone else. In order to calm the girls down, the teacher appeared and announced that the Empress had already arrived. From the sky, the Empress of his dragon state, Shangguan Lan, slowly descended. Xiao Xinyu immediately took a closer look and saw that she had an 11-star mark on her chest, meaning that she was above all the 10th-star hunters. And when Xiao Xinyu tried to analyze her pet, he realized that the gap was too big, and even the dragon eye could not evaluate this dragon. Xiao Xinyu mentally addressed the fox and asked what kind of people managed to summon after the Empress's order to catch the fox. He also added that she was probably very happy, because if she had not met him, she would be dead. The fox said that. Despite the fact that Xiao Xinyu is a rude person, she unfortunately cannot disagree with this. She also added that this dragon is most likely not the Empress's only beast and that she has many more such beasts under her command. The Empress meanwhile sat on her throne. Xiao Xinyu couldn't believe his eyes, because she had pure dragon power, after which she waved her hand, announcing the start of the battle. According to the draw, Xiao Xinyu will perform first, and against him there will be a member of the White Tiger Academy, Lin Tianqi, the son of the head of the Tiger Guild. Xiao Xinyu immediately summoned his pet, and Lin's was a huge snake. Murong immediately noticed that this snake with a sand attribute is a natural enemy of the Black Fang with its fire, and her brother noticed that when fighting opponents of equal level, the decisive factor is not the bloodline at all, but an elementary advantage. And this means that Xiao Xinyu got into such a situation. After several exchanges of blows, Black Fang was wounded. Lin smiled and said that the advantage was clearly on his side. However, Xiao Xinyu laughed and said that their battle had just begun, after which he held up 2 fingers, explaining that this was exactly the number of attacks he needed. Immediately after that, Black Fang was used. The Empress's assistant wondered if Xiao Xinyu really wanted to melt the sand, but she immediately noticed that his fire was too weak to do so. The Empress smiled and said that this was not what he wanted at all. She looked up and said that this guy wanted to take advantage of the 7-colored clouds that had enveloped this arena due to the Empress's presence.